The invisible daughter. The air in the Hamptons was crisp, smelling of sea salt and expensive lavender. My name is Elena Vance, and for 25 years I was the reliable one in the Vance dynasty. My father, Silas, owned the largest real estate firm in New York, and my mother, Catherine, was the queen of high society galas. Then there was my sister, Serena. If I was the sturdy oak tree, Serena was the delicate rose that everyone rushed to water. On my 25th birthday, there was no cake. Instead, there was a meeting in my father's mahogany-lined study. "Eleanor," my father said, not looking up from his ledger, "we've decided to settle the inheritance early. Serena is getting the Manhattan penthouse and the controlling shares of the firm. She's sensitive. She needs the security." My heart did a slow somersault. "And me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My mother sighed, adjusting her pearl necklace. "You've always been so independent, darling. We're giving you the Blackwood Estate in upstate New York. It's rustic. Your grandfather left it to us, and we think it suits your outdoorsy personality." Rustic was a lie. Blackwood was a crumbling Victorian mansion that had been abandoned for 20 years. It was a ruin, no heating, a leaking roof, and floors that groaned like dying ghosts. My parents weren't giving me a home, they were giving me a burden, so I would stay out of Serena's glamorous way. As I walked out with the rusty iron key, Serena smirked. "At least you'll have plenty of room for all those books you read, El. Just watch out for the rats." My parents laughed. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I took the key, packed my bags, and drove 5 hours north into the dark woods of the Hudson Valley, the ghost of Blackwood. When I first pulled up the gravel driveway of Blackwood, I wanted to turn around and drive off a cliff. The house looked like a skeleton. Ivy had strangled the stone walls, and the front porch was missing 3 steps. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of wet earth and rot. But I had one thing my family always underestimated: my degree in architecture and my hands-on experience in restoration. They thought I was a bookworm, but I knew how to read a house's soul. I spent the first month living in a tent in the grand ballroom because the bedrooms weren't safe. Every cent I had saved, money I'd earned working a side job they didn't know about, went into lumber, copper piping, and glass. I spent 16 hours a day sanding floors until my hands bled. I replaced the roof tiles one by one under the moonlight. One afternoon, a local man named Caleb, a stonemason with a quiet gaze, stopped by. "You're a Vance, aren't you?" he asked, looking at the scaffolding I'd built myself. "Your grandfather, Elias, was a good man. He told me once that this house was built over a natural spring. He said Blackwood wasn't just a house, it was a gold mine." I didn't understand what he meant until I started tearing down the rotted drywall in the basement. Behind a false wall of stone, I found it, a heavy iron safe. Inside wasn't gold or jewelry. It was a stack of original blueprints and a deed. As I read the documents, my breath hitched. My parents hadn't checked the land registry in decades. They thought Blackwood was just 30 acres of deadwoods. The deed showed that Blackwood sat on 1,500 acres of prime timber and mineral-rich land, and the natural spring Caleb mentioned was actually a high-grade mineral water source. The estate wasn't a ruin. It was worth 10 times more than the Manhattan penthouse they gave Serena. And because of the way the trust was written, by accepting the house, I now owned the land. The transformation. 8 months passed. I had turned Blackwood into a masterpiece. The Victorian Gothic architecture now glowed with dark charcoal paint and polished brass. The interior was a blend of modern glass and reclaimed oak. I had used the mineral spring to start a boutique bottling company, Blackwood Clear, which was already becoming a cult favorite in high-end New York restaurants. under a pseudonym, of course. I looked different too. The shy girl with the messy bun was gone. I was lean, strong, and my eyes held a cold clarity. Then the phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was high-pitched and frantic. "Elena, darling, we're coming up this weekend." Serena's investment in that tech startup went sideways. "We need to talk about Blackwood. We've decided it's too much work for you. We found a buyer, a resort developer. We'll split the profit with you. 10% for your trouble." I smiled into the phone. "I'm not selling, Mother." "Don't be difficult, Elena," my father's voice boomed in the background. "We're the owners of that estate. You're just the caretaker. We'll be there on Saturday. Have the guest rooms ready." They didn't realize that the caretaker had already changed the locks. Saturday arrived. A silver Bentley climbed the driveway. My father, mother, and Serena stepped out, dressed in silk and Italian leather, looking at the restored mansion with greedy eyes. They were shocked. The ruin was now a palace. "Wow, Elle," Serena said, touching the velvet curtains in the foyer. "You actually did a good job. This will make a great weekend house for me while I look for a new apartment." "You're not staying here, Serena," I said, leaning against the grand staircase. "Enough of this," Silas barked. "We've brought the papers. Sign over the deed. We've already taken a deposit from the developer. We need the cash to cover Serena's debts." I handed him a folder. "Actually, Dad, you should check the county records. You gave me the house and all." The legal war. The silence that followed was deafening. My father's face turned a deep shade of purple. "You trapped us," he hissed. "You knew." "I knew nothing until I started fixing the mess you threw away," I replied calmly. "You gave me the rustic house to get rid of me. Well, I'm not going anywhere." Over the next 2 weeks, the Vance family declared war. They hired a high-priced legal team to prove I had manipulated the inheritance. They started a smear campaign in the social columns, calling me an ungrateful daughter who stole from her struggling sister. But I had Caleb, and I had Marcus, a sharp-witted lawyer Caleb had introduced me to. Marcus found a loophole. My father had been using Vance Realty funds to pay for Serena's lifestyle for years, labeling them as consulting fees. It was corporate embezzlement. "We can crush them, Elena," Marcus told me. "If we take this to court, your father will lose his license and Serena will be bankrupt. But it will go public. Your family name will be ruined." I looked out at the Blackwood forest. I thought about the birthdays they forgot, the way they looked at Serena like she was gold and at me like I was lead. "They already ruined the name," I said. "Prepare the countersuit." Meanwhile, Serena started showing up at my gates, crying. "Elle, please, I owe millions to some very bad people. If Dad loses the firm, they'll come for me. You have so much now. Just give me the spring. It's just water." "It's not just water, Serena," I said through the intercom. "It's the sweat I poured into these floors while you were shopping in Paris. It's the blood on my hands from the roof tiles. You wanted the crown, but you didn't want the work. Now, you get neither." The Gala of Truth. My parents decided to host one final gala in the city to announce a partnership with a developer, a desperate attempt to sell land they no longer owned to get cash before the lawsuit hit. They didn't invite me, of course. I showed up anyway. I walked into the Manhattan ballroom wearing a dress that cost more than Serena's remaining car. The room went silent. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was the CEO of Blackwood Clear. I walked straight to the stage where my father was about to sign a mock contract with a developer. "Stop," I said, my voice projecting across the hall. "Elena, get out. my mother hissed, trying to grab my arm. I pulled a flash drive from my clutch and handed it to the technician running the projector. Ladies and gentlemen, I addressed the crowd of investors. Vance Realty is selling you air. The Blackwood Estate, the valley, and the mineral rights belong to me. And as of 4 o'clock today, Vance Realty is being investigated for the embezzlement of $14 million. The screen behind me filled with bank statements, highlighted in red. The room erupted. Investors started shouting. My father slumped against the podium, his heart finally failing his ego. Serena began to scream, accusing me of being a monster. I'm not a monster, Serena, I said, stepping off the stage. I'm just the architect. I built my own world because you wouldn't let me live in yours. The fall of the Vance dynasty. The aftermath of the gala was a whirlwind. My father was forced into early retirement to avoid prison, handing over what was left of the firm to a board of directors who hated him. My mother's social standing vanished overnight. The sensitive Serena had to sell her designer bags just to pay her lawyer. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, the kind of place they used to mock. One evening, I sat on my porch at Blackwood. Caleb was there, helping me plant a new garden. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my father. We have nothing, Elena. Your mother is sick with stress. Serena is working at a coffee shop. Are you happy now? Is this the revenge you wanted? I didn't feel happy. I felt clean, like I had finally scrubbed the rot out of my life. I drove down to Queens. I didn't go inside. I met my father on the sidewalk. He looked old. I'll pay for Mom's medical bills, I said, and I'll set up a modest trust for Serena, but she has to finish her degree and work a real job for 3 years first. I'm not doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because I'm a Vance, and I don't leave things in ruins. He looked at me, truly seeing me for the first time. You were always the strongest of us, he whispered. You should have noticed that before you gave me the key to Blackwood, I replied. The fall of the Vance dynasty. The aftermath of the gala was a whirlwind. My father was forced into early retirement to avoid prison, handing over what was left of the firm to a board of directors who hated him. My mother's social standing vanished overnight. The sensitive Serena had to sell her designer bags just to pay her lawyer. They moved into a small 2-bedroom apartment in Queens, the kind of place they used to mock. One evening, I sat on my porch at Blackwood. Caleb was there, helping me plant a new garden. My phone buzzed. It was a text from my father. We have nothing, Elena. Your mother is sick with stress. Serena is working at a coffee shop. Are you happy now? Is this the revenge you wanted? I didn't feel happy. I felt clean, like I had finally scrubbed the rot out of my life. I drove down to Queens. I didn't go inside. I met my father on the sidewalk. He looked old. I'll pay for Mom's medical bills, I said, and I'll set up a modest trust for Serena, but she has to finish her degree and work a real job for 3 years first. I'm not doing this because I love you. I'm doing this because I'm a Vance, and I don't leave things in ruins. He looked at me, truly seeing me for the first time. You were always the strongest of us, he whispered. You should have noticed that before you gave me the key to Blackwood, I replied. The new legacy. A year later, Blackwood was more than a home. It was a sanctuary. I had opened a school on the grounds for young architects, specializing in historical restoration. Caleb and I were married in the ballroom I had once slept in on a cold floor. My sister, Serena, actually showed up. She was tired, wearing a simple uniform, but she looked grounded. She didn't ask for money. She just asked for a glass of Blackwood water. I hated you for so long, Elle, she said, looking at the house. But I realize now, You didn't take anything from me. You just stopped letting me take from you. That's the beginning of wisdom, Serena, I said. My parents remained in their small apartment. I kept my word. I paid their bills, but I never invited them back to Blackwood. Some bridges are built to be crossed, and some are built to be burned so you can't go back to the person you used to be. The architect's piece. As the sun sets over the Hudson Valley, I stand on my porch. The house is solid. The land is thriving. I realize that my family thought they were punishing me by giving me a broken inheritance. They thought that without their money in their name, I would fail. But they forgot that a house is only as strong as its foundation. They were built on lies and greed. I was built on grit and cedar. I look at the rusty iron key, now framed in gold in my hallway. It's a reminder that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is a chance to prove them wrong. My name is Elena Vance. I am no longer the invisible daughter. I am the architect of my own life. And Blackwood is finally home.